Hey guys, it's Lotti again. I'm sitting here in an online call with Andy from Combichrist. Hi, first of all.
What's up?
It's fine with me and you. What's up
Yeah,
there?
no, everything's great, man. Everything's great.
Cool. I think it's 7 months ago since we talked last time. It was in Oberhausen at the Cool Temple.
Yeah.
So maybe before we start with anything else, you can tell me what have been the most exciting moments you had since then.
Since then, oh
Yeah.
man, it's been crazy, right? Because we've been, of course, we finished up that tour with Megahertz that we did, and then I've been working on the new album, finished the new album, packaged it, and it's off to the printers, So it's been quite busy, and then of course we've been out already, probably about like a month already for this tour in North America. So, and we're about 2/3 on the way on this tour right now, and going back, and then we're just going to prepare to go back to Europe. So it's it's quite busy, quite busy.
Okay, great. And about Europe and stuff, we will talk later on, and about the album. This is the main reason why we talk now.
Sure,
But first of all, let's have a glimpse on this US tour. You said it's half around now. You are in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
And have been in New York yesterday, in New York City.
New York yesterday. Correct.
Maybe as we last time we talked in Oberhausen, can you compare for me what's the same and what is different with the audiences and the venues there and the Cool Temple, for example?
Well, it's it's always hard to compare Europe to North America. It's easier to compare like Berlin to New York and London to LA or whatever. Like it's easier to compare, like audience wise and venue wise and everything. It's rather comparing certain cities to other cities, because obviously North America is humongous. So like you go from state to state and city to city. It's kind of like going from country to country in Europe. So it's already so different from country to country in Europe, But I think the biggest thing is I feel like Europe definitely has a lot more built-in culture when it comes to metal and or just live shows in general. And it's people look at it a little differently. It's here it's still, I don't know, it's still kind of they're fighting the system to make it happen. They're fighting the city to make it happen. They're fighting, like it's hard to have a live venue. They have to follow so many rules and restrictions. While in Europe, you get so much actually support from the local government to do venues and stuff like this. So you can tell the difference. Like today, we're playing in Pittsburgh. It's an amazing place. There's a lot of history. They have a little hardcore museum in here. There's a vinyl shop in here. But it's very self-made. It's very, very self-made. So sometimes it's the really cool places here might be sacrificed with a little bit of sound quality, for example, as in Europe. Like for most places, going to pretty much have top quality when it comes to equipment and stuff, because you have city and government funding for the culture around it. Here, it's not a part of culture. As in the government eyes, of course it's in the youth culture, it's in the metal culture, it's in industrial whatever, like it's in the culture for people, but not from the government side. So it's a little more difficult for people to set up good shows here. But in general, except from that, people greet us in the same way, like fans are fans. So and we were like yesterday was there's funny thing you say Cold Temple. It was like yesterday we had people at the show that I've seen at Cold Temple, and so there's people who travels too, like the super fans are traveling, and so when we do meet and greets and stuff, I get confused sometimes because I don't know you from New York, but I know your face, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm from from Paris or whatever. And So, but so people still, so it's still the same feeling when it comes to the audience. It's just venues are very different. Yeah.
But this is really cool. People from Europe coming to US to see you again. Are
Yeah,
they that hardcore?
Yeah, no, we have fans where there's fans that suddenly shows up in Australia and back when it was okay, you know, when you could play Russia, and it was, you know, we had people suddenly coming to show in Russia, and then we go to Australia and they would show up at the meet and greet, and I was like, whoa, what are you doing here? You know, there's some really dedicated fans out there for sure, and it's cool to see, you know.
Great. And are these the same fans, for example, that do tattoos of you or stuff that are really, really loving you that way, or is it different?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like obviously a lot of the hardcore fans have you know, it's gonna have more Combichrist tattoos than most others, but there's quite some normal people that you wouldn't even think were part of metal or industrial or anything that also show up, like it's just in general. But yeah, there's of course the diehard fans are the ones with, you know, with the logos on their hands and stuff, and it was cool. Yeah,
And Combichrist on the arm. I know some as well.
sure. That's it. Yeah.
Right. And I think you are a big tattoo fan, one might say so.
I actually hate it.
Sure,
I hate it. I hate getting tattooed. It doesn't look like it, but I absolutely hate getting tattooed. And but it's, you know, I've been doing it for over 30 years, you know, so it was just like, I hate it, but I still do it. But it's like every time I sit down, I get started, I was like, why am I doing this to myself? I hate it. And but I have nothing to prove anymore, man. Like if I take a tattoo now, I'll sit down and I'll be a baby and put some numbing cream on, because I don't want to go through that stuff anymore, you know. But yeah, I hate it.
okay. So and in future you only do airbrush tattoos. It's
Yeah,
easier.
something like that. If I could and it sticks, I would be totally okay with it. I don't mind.
Cool. But okay, one question about this. What was your first tattoo? Maybe?
My very first tattoo was it's not there anymore. It's completely covered over, but it was on my arm, and it was like everybody else at the early 90s, like 91, 92 or whatever. Like we were all getting biomech tattoos with the Swiss, I call it the Swiss cheese skin. It's like this, when the skin looked like they had holes in it. But yeah, that's long gone, very long gone.
Okay. Great. So let's come to your music now. It's maybe connected to your art and tattoos, maybe not. But last time when we talked, you teased the album. You said, okay, something is coming. You didn't tell too much, but you told me that you have to finish things, and you told it now.
Yeah.
So what exactly have been the things you had to do from that point to now to get the album ready?
Well, it's been a long time coming, this album. I mean, I probably wrote and recorded 3 times as much as we are releasing, obviously. And then we go through it and being particular with things. But most importantly for this album, I've tried to maintain a raw energy from all like from the old days, and not only from the old days with Combichrist, but before that, like from my metal days and my hardcore days and stuff, and get that raw energy. And but at the same time also focus on production and make sure that it comes through the right way. But there's always this dilemma, right? Like if we're trying to produce an album really well and without killing the raw energy, it's to not polish it too much. So that's really what we've been working with the most, is like to really try to capture that energy and produce it well at the same time. And I'm really happy, you know. It's I gotta say it's to my personally, very personally, this is my absolute favorite album so far. It just has and I guess I say this often, but if I wouldn't say it every time I do release an album, I guess I'm doing something wrong. And I can't. And if I look back to other albums, I can't say this about every album. There's definitely albums that I'm not 100% happy with. But with this album, I'm really excited. I'm really happy. It has, definitely has my metal and hardcore roots and stuff like this. But it does have a lot of the electronica part of it too. Not very. I wouldn't say that it necessarily has the gothic industrial necessary, but it has a lot of electronica definitely integrated to it, and but still, again, with a metal and hardcore heart. Yeah,
totally. When I listened to it for doing a review and preparing for this interview, I was totally reminded of our last talk, because you told about your roots, about your hardcore times, about your metal times, and that this is important to you. And the album has a really wide range, I think. It is from, as you said, metal. It has really some hardcore parts, like hardcore punk. I was thinking, okay,
yeah,
this is hardcore. Everything is in it. So how to come to impression, but I think this was important to you, to have all those parts inside.
yeah, for sure. And it's like also like your shirt, right? Or yours are leather strips. Like Klaus is a great friend, and I'm honored to call Klaus a friend, because I have been so inspired by what he has done over the years too. But it doesn't mean that I was only inspired by EBM or to other parts where it's purely industrial or purely metal or hardcore. I've been involved in all kinds of underground music. Everything that has been feeling like it has its place in the underground, I always had a finger on it. Like everything from black metal to thrash metal to hardcore punk, industrial, EBM, even techno, like even underground techno, like in the 90s, I would claim that even bands like Nitshade was more techno than it was anything else in the 90s, So to me, it was more important. The energy of the music was more important than what scene it was. And for me, it was always the music was more important than the scene that it belonged to for me. And I kind of been cruising through all of these scenes at the same time my whole life. So this is coming more and more clear in the more music I create now, the more it kind of combines. I mean, I would argue that I have probably inspirations from all of this. So even I don't want to say straight up hip hop, but like not obviously when you say hip hop now, it's such a wide word because it's so popular. But in the 90s, that was super underground as well.
Yeah.
So there's definitely influences from everything from hardcore to black metal and everything in between with electronica. So.
Yes. And for example, Klaus, I've seen in your timeline that he liked a lot of your postings. So I thought, okay, this could be a cool shirt. You never know if musicians like each other or not. It could have been a fault.
Yeah. No, I've never felt. I never looked at music, and this is the other thing. I never looked at music as competition. It's always been something to me that I've always, devoted myself to the art of music, and it's never been competition. Like I respect other musicians as much as I respect my own musicians in the band. There's something to say that we all are inspired by each other some way or another. So a lot of bands will have this. I always try to stay out of it because there's no competition in music. We're not the Eurovision, we're still underground artists, and luckily the underground artists today has a big platform, so we can play big festivals in front of a lot of people, and that's an amazing thing. And then by being competitive, you're just going to ruin it for each other. So it's better to support each other.
Yes. A funny thing you mentioned at the Eurovision, would be cool to have a Combichrist at Eurovision Song Contest, because I think Lord of the Lost have been too soft for this.
That might be true. They that's another band that is a great example. They are so extremely supportive of everybody around them, you know, and that's one of the reasons why they have where they are, because they made so much friends, and they're probably the hardest working band that I know. Like, and of course, I'm good friends with them. We toured with them. We go back far back. I mean, I basically signed Chris Harm's old band Unter Art to Out of Line, and you know, I also want to present them. So we go back very like far back to when I lived in Hamburg, actually, in early 2000s. And but they're super hardworking band. I don't know if we could do the same thing. We have a little different. We have a little different vision of musical art, I think. Eurovision might not be in my books.
Okay, that's sad. But it would be funny, totally, I think.
Yeah. I mean, if I could totally do it, but it would be 100% still us, you know. We wouldn't make a Eurovision song for it. If we would have done something like this, we would have need to represent ourselves as Combichrist and not the Eurovision version.
Totally understand. And then at this point we can come back to the album, because what is regarding the album, what would you say is totally typical Combichrist, and what is new, what is different somehow? What did you try out?
Typical Combichrist is to do something different every time. And everybody's like, well, oh, you're not doing the same anymore. And I was like, yeah, I never did. I've done something different on every album. But of course, the idea is there, the energy is there, and the feeling, or at least for the last, you know, like in the beginning, there was a lot of, you know, I don't know, it was also the time, early 2000s, where it was cool to be provocative or trying to be, you know, edgy or provoke or whatever. All that kind of thrown out. It was thrown out a long time ago and replaced with more serious topics. And I would never say that I am political, but it's more of a social documentary. Definitely, you know, it's more like, I think it's more the independent thinker view on the world rather than a political view of the world. So of course that's a big part of it. It's been following. But I think the most important thing is that it is 100% Combichrist. You know, this is it. It's 100%. That is uncompromising. I'm not compromising on anything. If I want to do it, I do it. And that is the most important thing. We never, ever did I write a song to create a hit or write a song to break into a mainstream or break into another thing. It's always been honest. And I would still say that that's the most important thing with this album, that it's extremely honest.
So, but you think about, for example, getting it on dance floors, on club dance floors, or is this even nothing that you care for?
Well, I think that I felt like that was way more important in before. I think that anything for a dance floor or whatever, it's like, yes, we could always have somebody do a dance floor remix or something for the song, which completely has its space and its time and place, like for the clubs. But I think for me to stay 100% with my integrity, to do music honestly, I can't think about, if this is going to work on the dance floor or not. It's going to be, do I like this or not? Will this translate from the stage? Because we're not playing the dance floors. We're playing on a stage. We're playing at festivals. We're playing at venues. We're playing in front of people. And it's a very different energy at shows than it is in a club. So I have to focus on what's real for this band and for what's real for me when it's creating music. it's for those situations and not for the clubs. You can always do club mixes, which is, I mean, it was before the early, like in the 90s, that was very common, right? Like you would do a club mix for the songs. But then early 2000s, it seemed like everybody was focusing on writing songs for the dance floor, or for the clubs. But I feel like that's changed a lot. Well, it's especially for me, it's changed. I'm focusing more on how would this translate live. Like of course, there's a lot of electronics, but when we rehearse with a band, we always rehearse without the electronics. We rehearse the songs without any of it. I mean, the keyboard, of course, playing keyboards, but we're not, you know, it's we're making sure that this sounds good as a band and not as a club DJ. You know?
Yeah, I understand. It's a different approach to say, okay, live or dance floor. Both has its reasons, I would say, but if you say we want to play live, and songs that go live and that catch the people live mostly also get to dance floor hits. You can use them as
somehow, exactly. Because if people, it's a good example of this is all the songs that are being played in clubs that are not dance floor music at all. They're just songs that people like to hear and they want to hear it. And so I feel like that's even more of a compliment. You know, if somebody goes and requests a song that is not for the club in the club, that's a huge compliment. Songs that works really well for the dance floor, of course, that's people always going to want to hear that at the club. But if somebody comes up and requests a song that is just powerful to be standing as its own as a song, that's way more of a compliment. For me, it is.
Understand, yes. And as we said, the album has many different songs. One that really surprised me was Northern Path. So maybe can you tell me the background of this one, especially?
It's very much built on. It's very much written and built on my travel through my own life, and how you know, you kind of see the final destination in life, you know, not the end, but your final destination to where you can live out to the end. And so this song was very much inspired by my current life and my current path, and of course my current fiance and everything. Like, it kind of like how everything is shaping up to where my life is going. So it's obviously it's a lot more personal than just it's more personal than a view of the rest of the world and how I portray the rest of the world, what I see from the outside. This is really coming from the inside. So it's a very, yes, definitely a very much more of a personal song.
That's what I felt. It is totally different as we always do, but it is also another emotional side, a little bit more, like easy, personal. Not easy. Easy is the wrong word, but emotional is the right word, I would say. Yes.
Yeah.
And the rest of the album, we can't talk about every song, but what I have seen is the first song and the last two tracks, which are connected together, both get the title with violence.
Yeah.
So I think this is something important to you as well, or has been something important for this record. The term violence and maybe different views on it, or how can I interpret it?
I mean, it's kind of the theme. It's kind of the theme of the album, right? So it's I feel like you're looking at is the world we live in right now. It's so consumed by violence. It's so consumed by everybody thinking that violence is the solution. Like how, and like we're just looking at the Middle East right now with Israel and Palestine and everything. It's so consumed by hatred in the name of religion. it's just completely insane. Everything horrible in the world right now is more or less contributed directly to religion, and they're using violence as tactics. And it's like, it's just, that's kind of the concept of the whole album, really, when you go into depth of it, like what we are as a human species. And you also think that we're so important, but we're not really important. Humans are very new to this earth compared to everything else, and everything else will be here when humans are gone. So maybe we should start looking at different paths than violence to fix our differences and our problems. If not, this planet will be just fine without us.
Yes.
And that's kind of my whole view on the album. Like it touches on this a lot, about religion, and then how religion is pretty much the catalyst of all human suffering, you know.
Yeah, that's how I see it as well. But are you in some way religious, or at least spiritual, or are you atheist?
I'm an atheist. But as being atheist doesn't mean that I can't be spiritual in my own way. I mean, I believe in nature. I believe in the healing from nature. So in one way you can call it witchcraft, but it's really not. It's just, you know, it's just what religious people will call it, right? It's where witchcraft originated from, was just basically natural healing and believing in nature, right? Medicine, science, really. That's where really my spiritualism, and it's proven we're all energy. We're not necessarily a conscious entity of energy, but we are all energy. So somewhere it goes somewhere, but it goes back into nature. So yeah, I'm not religious at all. I also very often consider myself a Satanist, but it's also not religious. It's just a term of being the opposite of modern religion. And what is the opposite of God? It's Satan. So and that's also a big difference. And people say, but you say you're a Satanist. And it's like, yes, but it's in the biblical term, it actually means the opposition. So it doesn't actually mean an entity. So it's just, I am just very opposite of modern religion.
I see. So the witchcraft thing, you can say it's not like the magical stuff, but the energy, the nature, whole life, and science. Science is a good term. So are you interested in science fiction, for example, in Star Trek stuff, seeing what might happen, or is it?
Sure. I mean, like, I'm always interested in it. I think that we just don't understand, like, because all of these things are completely possible. We just don't understand anything outside of our own set rules of science. So we know what comes up must come down. We know that if we measure it that direction, we know that it's going to have a measurement, or the weight or whatever. We only know the boundaries of our own science, that the rules that we set for our own science. We really don't know how it works for the rest of the universe. We just assume. We don't understand what forever is. We don't understand what, you know. So one day somebody's going to understand more, but it's not today, you know. So for now, science fiction is great, but for me, it is entertainment. And it's interesting entertainment, but we just don't really understand the concept of things. Like, we always look at aliens as beings, but we don't even know. Like, they can be molecules for all we know. They can be data, the straight up electronic data. We just don't know what that really means. So we always put 2 legs, 2 arms, and 2 eyes on it, because that's what we know. So so for me, of course, science fiction is fun and it's interesting, but we just don't understand. We don't really know what's out there.
Yeah, it's an interesting point of view. And that brings me back to the album, because I was thinking about some retro stuff, and you have a musical cassette also coming off the album. This is not science fiction, it's more retro. So who came up with this idea?
I wanted to do a VHS. But unfortunately, the last company to produce VHS tapes went out of business in 2012, apparently. So this was the next step to where I could have my retro thing. And it all came down because we were doing the music video for Planet Doom, which was a big thing for me to do a 70s, 80s type kind of corny horror flick, you know. And we did all that with practical effects, no digital effects. We did it with all the vehicles was from that time. The film camera was from that time. Even the film, some of the film is actually kind of grainy and shitty because it was actually really old film. And we edited the original. It all came back to be like, okay, this was my bucket list kind of thing. I really wanted to do this horror movie video, and in the way they did it back then, and to make it look like it was made back then. And next step then was like, okay, what can we do for the release that can tie it into that? It was like, okay, the VHS I did a cover art for it. We couldn't find anyone to produce it. The next step would be I could do it myself, to print out each single VHS and record each VHS on, but it was like, it's impossible. So we ended up doing with a cassette, and we thought that was a great idea. And it comes with a pen, you know. And for us, we know what that means. So younger people don't really know what that means, but the pen is important.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That was the most funny thing about it. I still have some cassettes somewhere up here. Ah, here. Like, for example, my old Masters of the Universe.
Oh, nice.
I found some in some box, and I said, okay, one day I will listen to them. We bought a cassette deck to listen to the old cassettes. Do you still have cassettes yourself?
Yes, I do. I also have a cassette deck. I just pulled out my. This is obviously not that old. This is obviously not very old. But I just pulled out my mini disc player.
Oh, cool! Yeah.
That I had in storage, and because I found a bag full of mini discs, because it was such a short-lived period of time in music history to do mini discs. So it was for cassettes. I have like everything you can imagine, like all the recordings, all the band rehearsal room recordings from my old punk bands and everything, and just from the radio, you made your own mixtapes and stuff. But for mini discs, this were really interesting because it was such a short period of time. So it was a very specific time of my life. So I was like, what could possibly be on these mini discs? So I've been going through them slowly but surely, going through all of them. And there's some quite interesting stuff on there.
I have some mini discs, but I have no player for them, so I can't listen to them at the moment. But maybe one day, when we meet in person, you bring the mini disc player, and we can listen to them.
There we go.
Great. So cool. I think now we can come slowly to an end, because I think we have a full date and a show today, and I don't know when you have a sound check and stuff, or did you have already?
Well, we just sound checked when I walked in here, and then before it, and now we're just preparing for the show tonight, and it's going to be a fun one. I love this venue. It's a great place. It's called the Preservation. Like I said, they have a vinyl shop in here as well, and I already spent way too much money on vinyls here today. And I got everything from Discharge and Cult of Luna to some old country stuff and some old Wu-Tang records. So I really fulfilled my whole genre spectrum again in vinyl as well.
So I see, when you come back from the tour, the bus is full of records.
Every time.
Yes. Okay, but then let's you mention it, your old punk times. And when I was scrolling to your timeline, what happened the last time and stuff, there was something you mentioned, Lash Out, one of your bands. So maybe as the last thing, you can tell a little bit about what was that. And
Lash Out was originally from Molde in Norway. They started in '92, and I say they because they started before I was in the band in '92. Very heavily influenced. They were kind of a part of the at the time the straight edge hardcore scene, but the metal hardcore scene at the time, which was at the time very new school metal in '92, or new school hardcore in the '92. But it was also heavily influenced by bands like Neurosis, for example.
Mhm.
And I was in other bands, other punk bands at the time, and hardcore bands and metal bands. It was a very small town, so I could do like playing with a grindcore band and one night, and then we'd be with the punk band, and then with a hardcore band, and suddenly I'd be sitting in the studio with some hip hop guys, you know, like it was a very small town. But then I joined Lash Out in '95, and we toured a lot. We toured a lot in Europe and in Germany and stuff as well. We were on a German label called Stormstrike from at the time, and then of course we also with Victory Records and all this other things at the time, doing a lot of shows similar and parallel to Refused, Hatebreed, Earth Crisis, kind of that stuff. So it's still something we are still dabbling in. Like we just talked about it just a few weeks ago, to maybe do a possible reunion with Lash Out again, which would be kind of cool. We will see. We will see. We'll see.
If it happens, let me know. I want to have an exclusive interview.
There we go.
Great. And we should, before we end, one thing, the obvious advertising, like the album is coming out midst of May 17th, I
May
think.
17th, I think. Yes, yeah.
And it's called Combichrist, also like Combichrist without vocals.
Yeah.
Vocals?
It's basically a self-titled album, but
like this.
But it could also be read as Combichrist. So
that's cool as well. And the last thing I have to know is what's coming then. Are you coming to Europe? Are there festival shows announced? Or
yeah. So we got everything lined up for the summer. We are doing festivals this summer. We are doing some venue shows as well in between, but mostly festivals this year. And then we're going back into the fall again, like we're back to the US, and then a full tour in Europe again in 2025. So we are definitely very busy going forward. So we'll be hitting a lot of festivals. I think the one of the festivals that I'm the most excited about probably this year is the Extreme Fest in Romania, which is always a cool festival. I always love to play the festivals with a lot of thrash and metal bands, because, you know, like my heart, you know, so it's always cool to see. And plus it's right next to the Dracula Castle. How cool is that, you know? Yeah,
that's really cool. Yeah, so take some pictures and show them of the castle.
There we do.
Great. So for today, I think we have more than enough stuff for also my article in Legacy and for the people outside. It was great to talk to you again.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure. And we do it again.
Yeah, I hope so. And to the people outside, thanks for watching. Check out Combichrist as always, and I say see ya next time. Bye.
See you next time.